How's it going, y'all? It's Nixus here. I wanted to talk about the Kanye apology. Recently, Ye has put out a formal public apology to not just the Jewish community, but to the Black community as well, for the things that he has said on social media, in videos, during interviews, just in general. Very destructive, very hateful speech that he was spewing, a lot of hateful rhetoric, trolling the Black community. I have the apology here, and I'm gonna go ahead and read this to y'all. Alright, so Kanye put this out 25 years ago. I was in a car accident that broke my jaw and caused injury to the right frontal lobe of my brain. Oh, so he sustained frontal lobe injury. That's actually crazy, because in my deleted reaction, when I was talking about his erratic behavior, I compared it to the behaviors of somebody who underwent a frontal lobotomy or somebody who had severe damage to their frontal lobe. I didn't even clock the car accident, wasn't even on my mind. And so now seeing it here and seeing specifically frontal lobe, I immediately clocked it from an outsider looking in and didn't even realize that this nigga actually had frontal lobe trauma. So what I said was correct. He's exhibiting these behaviors because people who have had severe damage and or lobotomy to their frontal lobe, they don't have inhibitions anymore. They don't have the fear. Whatever's on their mind, they're going to say it. It's also why children are brutally honest. That's because their frontal lobe is still developing. The part of the brain that processes insight is either still developing or is severely damaged. That's why children don't think about how what they say can hurt others, is because that part of the brain is still developing. That just gave me insight on why he's acting like this. That makes a lot more sense. At the time, the focus was on the visible damage, the fracture, the swelling, the immediate physical trauma. The deeper injury, the one inside my skull, went unnoticed. Comprehensive scans were not done, neurological exams were limited, and the possibility of a frontal lobe injury was never raised. It wasn't properly diagnosed until 2023. That medical oversight caused serious damage to my mental health and led to my bipolar type 1 diagnosis. Bipolar disorder comes with its own defense system: denial. When you're manic, you don't think you're sick, you think everyone else is overreacting. You feel like you're seeing the world more clearly than ever, when in reality, you're losing your grip entirely. He's right. People with bipolar disorder, people with paranoid schizophrenia, you're not you. You know, it's the darkest shadow of yourself that's let loose without any control, without any constraints. There's no balance. It's all chaos. People who are bipolar or paranoid schizophrenic, they can't control this. They don't know, because there's no switch. There's no trigger to let them know that they're about to go into an episode. They just flip on the dime. Especially people who are schizophrenic, it blurs the line between reality and fiction. They don't know what's real anymore. They're trapped in a prison of their own mind, an endless hell of their own creation, and they don't know how to get out. Trapped in this labyrinth of nightmares and uncertainty. That type of shit is torture. It's horrifying. It's why I love Lovecraftian horror, and horror that plays around with reality and people's perception of reality, because that's what sanity is rooted in. The fact that our reality is stable, or the illusion that our reality is stable. I could go on and on and on about this, but I'm preaching to the choir here. Y'all ain't here to listen to me fucking give y'all a whole lecture. I know I probably put half of y'all niggas to sleep. Let's continue. Once people label you as crazy, you feel as if you cannot contribute anything meaningful to the world. It's easy for people to joke and laugh it off, when in fact this is a very serious, debilitating disease you can die from. According to the World Health Organization and Cambridge University, people with bipolar disorder have a life expectancy that is shortened by 10 to 15 years on average, and a 2 to 3 times higher all-cause mortality rate than the general population. Okay, he throws statistics out here. This is on par with severe heart disease, type 1 diabetes, HIV, and cancer, all lethal and fatal if left untreated. The scariest thing about this disorder is how persuasive it is when it tells you you don't need help. It makes you blind, but convinced you have insight. You feel powerful, certain, and unstoppable. And that's the part of it that's so dangerous, is because it is the brain gaslighting itself into thinking that everything's okay when they're spiraling. This ties back to what he was talking about at the beginning, the denial. Your insight knows that something's wrong, but your mind is tricking you. It's saying, no, everything's fine. You're fine. It's them. They're the problem. You're not the problem. We're all fine here. You're not crazy. Your reality is real. You're just overreacting. It's like euphoria. But then when the walls come crashing down, because you've been in this state of bliss for so long, you genuinely don't know what to do. The crushing reality is too much for the mind to handle when it's on that high, and so it breaks because it genuinely just cannot process that much information at one time. I lost touch with reality. Things got worse the longer I ignored the problem. I said and did some things I deeply regret. Some of the people I loved the most, I treated the worst. You endured fear, confusion, humiliation, and the exhaustion of trying to love someone who was, at times, unrecognizable. Looking back, I became detached from my true self. In that fractured state, I gravitated toward the most destructive symbol I could find, and even sold t-shirts bearing it. One of the difficult aspects of having bipolar type 1 are the disconnected moments, many of which I still cannot recall, that lead to poor judgment and reckless behavior that often feels like an out-of-body experience. This is probably one of the most telling signs of maturity ever, is when somebody is able to actually admit that they're wrong. Not trying to gaslight the public into thinking that they just perceived it wrong. You just didn't understand. You just misunderstood me. He's not putting the blame on anybody except himself. He's saying, I am a damaged individual. Having the courage to say that you are in fact broken is one of the most mature things that a man could ever do, especially on such a scale as this. Being such a polarizing figure in the hip-hop community, it is very mature that Kanye is able to say this to the world. To actually be able to say, I am broken, I am damaged, I have hurt people, and I am trying to get help. I can always appreciate when a man, or anybody, when somebody who has done wrong is able to admit that they are wrong, and for anybody in Hollywood to admit that they are indeed a flawed individual and actually own up to their actions. I love this. I'm not saying that this excuses what he did. I admire the maturity. I regret and am deeply mortified by my actions in that state, and I'm committed to accountability, treatment, and meaningful change. It does not excuse what I did, though. I am not a or an anti. I love Jewish people. That kind of read like I'm not anti. I have Jewish friends, but we're gonna continue. To the Black community, which held me down through all of the highs and lows and the darkest of times, the Black community is unquestionably the foundation of who I am. I am so sorry to have let you down. I love us. In early 2025, I fell into a 4-month-long manic episode of psychotic, paranoid, and impulsive behavior that destroyed my life. As the situation became increasingly unstable, there were times I didn't want to be here anymore. Having bipolar disorder is not a state of constant mental illness. When you go into the manic episode, you are ill at that point. When you are not in an episode, you are completely normal. And he'd put normal in quotations. And that's when the wreckage from the illness hits the hardest. Hitting rock bottom a few months ago, my wife encouraged me to finally get help. She should have encouraged you to get help from the beginning, but you know, better late than never, I guess. I have found comfort in Reddit forums of all places. Different people speak of being in manic or depressive episodes of a similar nature. As much as I bash Reddit, I will say that it is a great community for finding people who are just like you, who are sharing their stories, whether to help somebody or to warn people about this pattern of behavior. There are good Reddit communities that are very, very accepting, very compassionate, and very empathetic. However, the ones that are bad tend to overshadow the ones that are good. Different people speak of being in manic or depressive episodes of a similar nature. I read their stories and I realized that I was not alone. It's not just me who ruins their entire life once a year despite taking meds every day and being told by the so-called best doctors in the world that I am not bipolar, but merely experiencing symptoms of autism. Man, bro, doctors have been misdiagnosing people, especially black people, since the Tuskegee experiments, bro. Like, black people are just not safe with these doctors. Ironically enough, the best doctors that black people have had good experiences with have all been German doctors. Yeah, think about that. Both my mom and my dad, the best doctors that they've recalled ever, being a patient for have been German. White German doctors apparently are just like the golden standard for treating people like actual human beings. The irony is just, I have to laugh. My words as a leader in my community have real global impact and influence. In my mania, I lost complete sight of that. As I find my new baseline and new center through an effective regimen, he says regime, but I think he means regimen. Through an effective regimen of medication, therapy, exercise, and clean living, I have newfound much needed clarity. I'm pouring my energy into positive, meaningful art, music, clothing, designs, and other ideas to help the world. I'm not asking for sympathy or a free pass, though I aspire to earn your forgiveness. I write today simply to ask for your patience and understanding as I find my way home. With love, Ye. And a lot of people have not really accepted his apology. There's of course overwhelming support for him. But then you have the people that, are holding him accountable for his actions. The ones who are really like, I understand, I see your apology. And I respect that you're mature enough to come forward and admit that you did wrong. However, the damage is it's gonna be a long road to re-earn everybody's trust, because the damage is just too done. And sometimes that damage can be permanent. And this post on Threads really helped give me some insight on this. I'm gonna go ahead and read it now. Trigger warning. It's very bad. This is for educational purposes, YouTube. So trigger warning before we begin. Trigger warning. Okay? Cool. Got it. I once cared for a client whose mother tried to unalive her. She had a mental breakdown and drugged herself and her child, then attempted to drown her in the bathtub. When that didn't work, she took more drugs and put her disabled child in the car and intentionally crashed it into a tree. According to the chart, the courts ordered that the mother was never allowed to have unsupervised contact with her child again. Very reasonable considering what the fuck she did. Even after the mother got sober, sought therapy, and appeared stable and healthy, a judge still determined that too much harm had already been done, and the risk was too great to ever trust her with unsupervised access to that child again. And I believe that decision was fair. Honestly, after trying to unalive her own child twice, she was lucky to even get supervised visits, and it took her years to get that. Yes, as staff and caregivers, we saw the love she had for her child and we felt empathy, but after knowing their history, we simply could not risk something else happening to that defenseless disabled child again. No matter how much she cried or pleaded, we had to follow the court order. I think about that case because it feels relevant. A lot of people are willing to forgive when someone is struggling with their mental health. And yes, mental illness can absolutely shape behavior. I'm sure bipolar disorder impacted Ye's actions in real ways, but not every action is forgivable just because it was influenced by mental illness. Empathy does not erase harm. Sometimes, too much damage has been done. Sometimes, accountability looks like distance. Forgiving someone does not always mean giving them access again. Kanye didn't just say some wild things. He aligned himself with literal Nazis and spread anti-Semitic messaging that caused real harm to real people. He endorsed an administration that is currently attacking people of color. We're going to say colored people because that's literally what that is. That's currently attacking colored people and innocent US citizens. If y'all don't like that I say colored people instead of people of color, bite me. What, you think flipping it around suddenly makes it better It's colored people. I'm calling it colored people. That cannot be minimized or brushed aside because mental illness played a role. Mental illness can help explain behavior. It does not excuse it. And it does not obligate the public to keep giving someone a massive platform after they've used it to amplify hate and dangerous ideology. I truly hope Kanye gets better. I hope he finds stability and peace, but I do not believe he needs access to a platform that influences millions of people while that process is happening. Not right now, not in this climate, not when extremist rhetoric is already causing real-world harm. Accountability is not cruelty. Boundaries are not punishment. Sometimes the most ethical decision is acknowledging that someone does not get the same level of access ever again, even if you still wish them healing. I met the mother and spoke to her, and she was very open about what happened. She says she was overwhelmed with having a disabled child and caring for her by herself. She started drinking and taking pills, and eventually something in her snapped. I understand. I empathize. I do not believe that means she should blindly be trusted again. I said all of this to say, I see that Ye is human and I empathize, but I do not believe he should be blindly trusted again. Sometimes she would just want to take her for ice cream or have her home on the weekend, and it was always a no, a hard no. Because it's not just ice cream or a sleepover anymore. It's you asking us to trust you with her life when you've already proven that you can't be trusted. How many times are these people going to keep proving to us that they can't be trusted? And the thread ends there. And I believe what she said was very, very poignant. Based, for lack of a better term. You could still accept an apology and love somebody who has hurt you while also holding them accountable for their actions and not giving them easy access back into your life. Like, you can hold them at a distance. It's not holding a grudge. It's holding that person accountable for their shitty actions and their shitty behavior. And the person is only going to say that it's holding a grudge because they don't like having to take accountability and face the punishment and the consequences of their actions. They'd rather forget that it all happened to begin with and try to slide back into your good graces like nothing ever happened, not knowing that that's not how reality works. That's not how life works. If you burn bridges, you can't just try to slide back in like you weren't the one that lit the match. Obviously, people are going to continue looking at you some type of way, and you still will not be allowed within a country mile of any bridge, literal or metaphorical. Ye has to face the consequences of his actions, and I believe we as a community should let him face the consequences of his actions. Not because he's being bullied by the industry, but because he made the conscious decision to do those things, whether afflicted by mental illness or not. It is your conscious choice as somebody who suffers from mental illness to seek the help that you need, to get the medication, to actively figure out what's going on so that you can compromise and you can find ways to combat it, find ways to keep it in check. All of those actions in like future manic episodes are a direct cause of your lack of approaching the problem and trying to fix it. The first step to recovery is acknowledging that you have a problem. And this is Kanye's first step, his first official step to recovery. He just acknowledged to the general public, I have a problem and I want to fix it. And that is going to be the first step on a long journey of rebuilding, healing, and self-actualization. He will, in time, earn back people's forgiveness. It won't be the same. It will never be the same because the wounds are just too deep. But it's a good start and it's a good step in the right direction. As always, I have been Nixus, and I will see you in the next video. See ya.